Welcome to War Room Impeachment. It is Friday, the 10th of January, the year of our Lord 2020. We are live from Capitol Hill, episode 106. Raheem Kassam, Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam of Brexit fame, or infamy, and Jason Miller of the Trump 2016 campaign and the transition, where he's communication director. We're live on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem Radio throughout the country, also America's Voice.news, the streaming platform where you saw President Trump's rally wall-to-wall last night, and Newsmax TV, the fastest-growing cable news operation in the country. We're going to be joined at in the 9:30 half-hour, second segment of the show, with Congressman Matt Gaetz, who has caused a little bit of fury in the Trump movement this morning, and including Maggie Haberman, the dear friend Maggie Haberman, our colleague over on CNN in the New York Times, the failing New York Times, and fake news CNN, lighting Matt Gaetz up. I guess she was laying it out. Other people are laying him up. Okay, where do you guys want to start? There's so much going on, and how do we? And Nancy Pelosi. Master strategist Nancy Pelosi really pitched the show because she calls it the two eyes, and the two eyes are inextricably. I mean, she's listening to you, Jason. You've been on this, that impeachment in Iran are inextricably linked. She starts off her press conference yesterday with the two eyes, right? The two eyes are inextricably linked. I think we'll get to the Iran part, or most of it, with Congressman Gaetz, because we want to hear Congressman Gaetz' logic on this war powers resolution. But where she's leaving town and she's not forwarding the two articles of impeachment.
No, and in fact, she threw down yesterday in her press conference and said that she'll send them over when I'm ready. We can get clear that Nancy Pelosi believes she is still in charge of everything.
This is Trump versus Pelosi, right? There's no doubt.
Yeah, but I think I can't overstate enough the pushback that Pelosi is getting from the media and from Democrats in a way that we haven't seen any point in this process. Now, a couple of those Democrats in the Senate have walked back some of their criticism.
Hold it, stop. There were some people in the House. There were a couple of chairmen, right? There was Adam Smith. There's chairman. There were a couple of heavy hitters in the Senate that came out yesterday. There was a jailbreak. Right, there was the beginning of a jailbreak, and she got some folks' minds right. Right, everybody came back and was all in. Danang, Dick, the whole crowd of them came back and said, "No, upon further review."
Oh, right? No, it was very much a Chairman Smith, please hold for a call from Speaker Pelosi. I mean, it was one of those moments. But look, she was very defiant in her press conference yesterday. Said, "When I'm ready." And she is making clear that she is that she has something bigger in mind here, and there's a reason why I think that she's delaying this and why she's going to keep.
Let's go to the Washington Times story. So the two things would be more. First off, her strategic direction, as they're hinting, is number one, to get this meme out there about the trial's unfair. So when he gets acquitted, it's unfair already, right? And so one is to beat that, have her media acolytes beat that drum. The second is to try to get some weakness and to show, quote unquote witnesses, which, by the way, as you know, I think here at the War Room, we're pro witnesses. We just want, and President Trump at the podium of the day, yesterday in the Roosevelt Room, he wants witnesses. He lays it out, the War Room impeachment hit parade. He wants a whistleblower. He wants Hunter Biden. He wants Joe Biden and others, right? That's his thing. And of course, they got Bolton, Mulvaney. Ari Melber had a really good segment on yesterday. He had 6 Democrats that were on the jury, senators, John Breaux and these guys, all Lieberman. He brought 6 guys back. I thought it was an excellent segment. He'll do a whole show on it, walking through the Clinton impeachment. All of those guys, the Democrats, walked through who their hit list would be. Mulvaney, the other OMB guys, voting these guys be next. Bolton was actually third. It was Rudy. It was Bolton. It was Mulvaney, other OMB personnel, Rudy, and then Bolton.
And look, President Trump said again just yesterday that he is interested in having witnesses. He's thrown out there in the whistleblower, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Shifty Schiff. I mean, he wants to bring them all through, and especially when this trial starts and people start getting pulled up, there's no way that President Trump is going to watch that and not want to have them. But Steve, I do think it's important to also point out McConnell's throwdown yesterday by signing on to that Josh Hawley language that was introduced, and what that is for people who might not know. Josh Hawley, along with Senator Braun, along with Senator.
But it's not.
Gaetz,
But I know. Go ahead and explain it, because it's nonsense. Because you're not going to get 60. You need to change the rules. You need 60 votes.
unless, well, you can do the nuclear option and do 51.
Yeah, but see, if you do the nuclear option, you're playing into their hand. Then you're showing as partisan as their. You know, the thing we've got going for us is the highly partisan nature of the House vote and keeping the Republicans united. If you then go to the nuclear option to go to a quick acquittal, the continuation of the nullification project will stay every day. You know, it was a rigged system. You had 51 votes. You don't buy that?
I think that if the Democrats aren't going to go and send these articles over, the message McConnell is sending is that we're going to go and end this thing.
Right. At some point in time, we've got a red line.
Because Pelosi has lost the momentum that she had, the urgency, the fierce urgency of now that she had going into the Christmas break.
Clear and present danger.
That we had to get this done, otherwise the world was going to stop revolving on its axis, and that's been destroyed by Pelosi's feet dragging.
The three. So one is the meme of it's unfair. It's not a fair trial. The second is to open up this whole concept of witnesses. The third in her timing is the State of the Union, is it not? She does not want this thing to go over to the Senate, to have it resolved, to then have Donald J. Trump go to the State of the Union, where he is fantastic. You know, the setting is perfect. It's somber. It'll be, basically in the same Capitol where he was just tried and exonerated or acquitted, and he comes in and on a global television. And, he wasn't able to testify or be a witness during his trial, but now he's going to come in the first 30 minutes with her sitting right in back of him doing the alligator clap.
The headline that they want is President Trump delivers State of the Union under a cloud of uncertainty.
Exactly.
That's
in fact, we write that to tell the New York Times. You could already write that headline, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm sure it's written.
So she slow walked. Here's my point. We're not coming back Monday, and I don't think she's going to be delivering these things to the Senate. We're going to go through another week of this, right?
I think she delays it until probably late next week and then sends it over. So all the Senate can really do is maybe some procedural things, maybe vote to set up the parameters, which basically means that there's no way that the trial itself starts until, say, Monday the 20th, Tuesday the 21st, somewhere in that range. It's probably 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, but either way, I think
the State of the Union is right in the middle of it, is the way they want it.
Toward the end, but they'll keep it going at least.
Politico playbook. You let's talk about that, because this flows into what should the White House's counter. And Raheem, jump in here. I noticed you're really enjoying your coffee this morning.
Really enjoying the discussion.
I can tell you're hanging on every word. What should be the counter narrative coming out of the White House on this, knowing that, and now you've got the New York Times praising her, the cover story of Time, the point they're making in a long and illustrious career, this is her biggest moment, right? So it's now, the whole media is raising up to Pelosi versus Trump. How should the White House be countering this, knowing we now know what her strategy is, right? Not just to slow walk this, but she's got some strategic things she's trying to do downrange.
I'd go right back at him and say, what is Nancy Pelosi hiding? What is it that Nancy Pelosi what is it that she's afraid of? Is it the fact that she's going to send up these two articles that are going to absolutely destroyed in the Senate? That her whole master strategist aura about her, and while she has this Time magazine cover, is all going to come crashing down. Basically, the party is over for Nancy Pelosi. But what is it that Speaker Pelosi and Shifty Adam Schiff and the rest of the House Democrats, what are they hiding?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm somebody who's quite quick to jump on messaging failures, but I want to actually give the White House credit in this regard. The video that was released, I think, a day or two ago about the urgency, right? The urgency of this whole thing. This
very powerful.
Companion video has been very powerful, and I noticed it was pushed back out yesterday as well. And CNN,
they ought to continue to amplify that. And
CNN has a story today calling it Nancy Pelosi's near 4-week limbo. And so that's not exactly the headline she wants.
When we come back, what I want to address is how the team that's going to defend him is inextricably linked with this strategic messaging, in that it seems like, besides the video, there's a quite lawyerly, and I'm not getting on top of the lawyers. You got to have great lawyers, but there's a kind of a lawyerly drive that they're having on this thing, playing into the thing that this is austere. It's got to have gravitas. It's a legal proceeding versus the fire breathers, right? And the messaging of this, and how do you message against what Nancy Pelosi is trying to do? So, Raheem, how do people get to the site 24/7? How do they get to us?
Warroom.org is the URL for everything impeachment related and more. We've been following
The
that.
two eyes. We got Iran, we got the impeachment.
Yep, that's right. And we got our eyes on everything related to both at the moment. Warroom.org. Make sure you're signed up to the newsletter, the podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play. We're really grateful. I've been watching the reviews. We got some great ones coming in.
Yeah, in
Thank
fact,
you
the
for
reason
it.
this show's on fire, and the reason is people are pushing out. We'll be back, episode 106 in a second.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to episode 106, War Room Impeachment, live from Capitol Hill, just yards away from where President Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, was impeached a couple of weeks ago. Now we're in limbo, according to CNN, the Nancy Pelosi limbo. Raheem Kassam, Jason Miller, we're now honored to be joined by Congress, the man of the moment, right? Congressman Matt Gaetz. Was this a profile in courage yesterday, or was it a was it a mad bombing run?
I think it was a reflection of the true Trump doctrine. I believe the Trump doctrine works at its best when we kill the terrorists and come home, and we do not engage in endless forever wars in the Middle East. And I think that, when you look at some of the folks, particularly in the Senate, who are critical of the resolution, it's some of the same folks who are the biggest champions of a lot of these interventionist regime change wars. I am not one who believes that we need another generation of these quagmires. And I also think that we politically cannot allow Nancy Pelosi to cast Donald Trump as the pro-war candidate.
Okay, I think let's break this down because I want to take this from two angles. Number one is what you believe is the moral high ground and what is correct for the country. Number one, three verticals. The number two is what the meaning of the Trump movement is. And number three, just the practical, hard-headed politics of this, because I think at all three levels, on Tucker last night, you laid it out, but I want to make sure you got more time here. There are three levels of this. One, what is the moral and right thing to do for the country? And you just had come back from Arlington.
I buried one of my constituents yesterday, Sergeant Gobble, who went to Afghanistan. He was on his 9th deployment and died as a hero, as a patriot, and just buried a lot of my constituents during my time in the Congress. I don't believe that these protracted engagements that are unfocused, unconstitutional, that have bled away $6 trillion, more than the market cap of Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple combined. I don't think that really is best for our country. You talk about the politics of it. I get sick and tired of people in this town acting like toughness is engaging in conflict in the Middle East. I think real toughness is actually standing up to the perpetual war lobby.
Because they're not doing the 9 deployments. So the cost of the Watson study at Brown University, the $5 trillion in Iraq and the $2 trillion in Afghanistan. My daughter, West Point grad, fought in Iraq with the 101st. When she came back, she had a command of a unit, and her non-commissioned officers, this is a couple of years ago, were 6 and 7 tours. The destruction of the families of the military. This is the 1% that serve. People don't. This is the quiet thing they don't see. You do 9 deployments. The sergeant that's buried in Arlington National Cemetery today, that his young kids and his wife and his family, that's just the tip of it. It's the 9 deployments. That's 6 months to a year. That's 8 or 9 years of his life has been, in these countries. Do they deserve American servicemen in there continually for 18 years? The Afghan war's gone longer than the combat time of the American Revolution, the Civil War, World War I, and World War II combined. Okay? That's the losers. Okay? That's what Trump ran against. That's what the fire in the upper Midwest, and we broke the blue wall, was these blue-collar Democrats whose kids go and fight, right? And this is why I think the movement, and I know President Trump understands this and gets it. If he had listened and acted upon what was up on cable TV from people who I respect, are friends of mine and colleagues of mine, and guys that I really think the world of, but if he had acted upon some of the recommendations the other night to go and start bombing, to do bombing runs and to do this kind of thing, we'd be in a world of hurt right now, right? As a country, as a movement, and particularly his presidency.
You're right that the Trump movement is an anti-war movement. I mean, it really is. I mean, and that's not to say we don't defend ourselves. I think there's a key distinction there. You know, in the resolution that I voted for yesterday, there was a robust articulation of self-defense, even if we had to take a preemptive action to protect our troops. But there is a difference between action in defense of our troops and our allies and a protracted forever war in the Middle East.
Matt Gaetz is from the Panhandle of Florida. He represents the Panhandle of Florida. That's Pensacola. That and retirees. That is servicemen. There's no question that you support the United States military. In fact, what you've done is support the United States military. This is the support of the United States military from people who serve. I was 8 years a naval officer. My daughter's was an Army officer. You know, these are people who got skin in the game. That's why I admire you. I think the question gets to be the timing. I know Jason wants to jump in here, but I think what you did, because I think this is the thing that helps President Trump make the country better, take the country forward, and also really beats back his enemies. And also what you said on Tucker, I think was brilliant. Nobody said about, you walk through the analysis, is the candidate that's the anti-war candidate wins. You know why? Because the country, we don't want to be, it's not that the United States is not going to defend itself. It's not that the United States doesn't have a militaristic edge to it, and President Trump does also. But right now, how can you read the Afghanistan papers out there and criticize this guy? How can you criticize Gaetz when the Afghanistan, you have not read it? The lies and the misrepresentations. And that's what's buried over at Arlington National Cemetery. The best of a generation that volunteered for this, we have let them down, right? And I think that's yesterday what stood up. Now, it gets to be a question of timing, right? You jump in here, Jason, because Gaetz can defend himself. He doesn't need to do it.
So, Congressman, obviously you're one of the biggest, if not the single biggest defender of the president in the House of Representatives, something that we're very proud of.
When it's tough to defend him.
When it's very tough. And you haven't wavered or backed down at all.
Your guy stands in the breach all the time.
Unlike the peaceniks or the people who rather the Ilhan Omers of the world who are out there saying some pretty egregious stuff over the last 24, 48 hours, you made very clear that the president made the right call in removing Soleimani.
Yes.
That was the correct call. But the Democrats' push yesterday, it was inextricably linked with the Soleimani strike and with this war powers resolution. But you're treating them as very different. Tell us how you can be very much supportive of the president, what he did, taking out Soleimani, a known terrorist, but then also support this war powers resolution when the Democrats talk as though they're linked.
Well, we're not going to war with Iran, and that's because Iran doesn't want to go to war. President Trump doesn't want to go to war. The American people don't want to go to war. The biggest animating factor drawing our countries into a war we didn't want was General Soleimani. He was doing everything he could to draw our nation into war, and killing him was the right thing to do for that reason. There was one reference to Soleimani in the resolution that was initially filed on war powers. And so I went to the Democrats and said, if this resolution includes any criticism of the Soleimani killing, if it includes any criticism of President Trump or his policies, I'm not voting for it, because I'm not in for just a vehicle to go and smash the president. But if the resolution instead articulates our robust rationale for self-defense, and if it lays out that on a going forward basis, no president can drag our country into a Middle East war in the absence of approval of Congress, then I'll vote for it. And my Democrat colleagues took my amendment, removed any criticism from the president, and I thought that was a win. I thought that was a win for the president, because I do believe, from a messaging standpoint, it is important for the president to see the people who care about him and love him and fight for his agenda every day continue to animate the populist anti-war sentiment that undergirds our movement. And I think there's never a bad time to do that. And for all the Republicans who are saying, well, Matt, I agree with you, but I mean, come on. I mean, is this really the right time to be doing this? Look, we have been at war my entire adult life in undeclared, unconstitutional wars. And so I think it's always a good time to reassert the role of the Congress, and to do so in a way that does not criticize the president, but that reinforces what I know are his values and his instincts.
We're going to return with a populist nationalist firebrand, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Raheem, how do people get to the overall site?
Warroom.org.
Okay, this is War Room Impeachment, episode 106. Matt Gaetz, Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam, Steve Bannon, when we return.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam. War Room Impeachment
on the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Episode 106, we're live from Capitol Hill, Friday, 10th of January, year of our Lord 2020, Congressman Matt Gaetz. I want to go back to you, before you get to the political aspect of it, your floor speech, but particularly your understanding of the real cost of what these forever wars have cost. You understand this.
I live in the district that has more troops than any other in the United States Congress, and I see the impacts of these wars in the tearful hugs at airports, in the broken marriages, in the interrupted parenting, in the veteran suicide, in the drug abuse that happens. And these are our bravest patriots. These are the people that we uphold as having exemplified a love for our country that is unique in our nation. And so all of my life, I've seen how these wars impact people. And while I absolutely agree the president has Article 2 powers to go and kill a terrorist, to defend our troops, to take out someone who's trying to drag us into war, I do not believe that Article 2 would allow any president to drag us into a decades-long war. And what worries me is that, this Syria war started when Obama sent 40 guys. The opening chapters of a forever war always include some nominal deployment, and then you got to have force protection around that, and then you got to have force protection around that. Then somebody kills an American, and all of a sudden you're spilling the blood of America's bravest
and
patriots.
This is because the neocons are so irresponsible. They don't mind sending the sergeant that had 9 deployments. They don't mind a 10th deployment. They don't mind an 11th deployment. They're irresponsible. What Gaetz was standing up for was responsibility. And nobody's more anti-war than President Trump, right?
He told me that. I was with the president, and I said, I kind of joked with him down at Mar-a-Lago that Tucker Carlson and I had to advocate strong against some of those who wanted to avenge a robot with blood, and were we going to have to do the same thing again? And the president turned to me and said, Matt, I believe what you believe more than you believe it. And I love the president for that. I think that his instincts are right. I wish he would hire a few more people who agree with him.
The economic war, what he's doing to the mullahs, he's breaking them. That's why I was so great yesterday in the Roosevelt room, where he reiterated, or the other night, he says, I'm going to put in more sanctions, right? When he talked the other morning, I'm going to put in more sanctions. The economic war, where you're not putting out American blood in treasure, you're taking their treasure.
And you know what makes that economic war successful? When we improve our country. If we'd have taken that $6-7 trillion and invested it in America, if we would ensure that the dollar is stronger, then it is a more effective tool in sanctions. But when we have to go and sell $1 trillion in bonds to fund the largesse of government, so that we can have all these interventionist wars, then we make our country weaker, not stronger.
Peter Bergen sat here yesterday from CNN in this very seat and told us what Imran Khan from Pakistan came to the UN and said, hey, why are you guys in Afghanistan when your subways don't work here? Why have you spent $2 trillion in Afghanistan?
China's laughing at us, too. China looks at these hostilities with Iran, and they hope that we get dragged into another endless war, because they have gone and expanded their empire without firing a shot.
In this segment, I want you to jump in and get this, and then your part, okay? Go, you first.
Yeah, Congressman, when President Trump came out and gave his remarks on Iran, that was Wednesday morning when he came out and did that, did you not think that he was declaratively anti-war, or are you still worried that the administration will pull him into a conflict?
I thought those remarks represented one of the high marks of the Trump presidency. I believe that he laid out the Trump doctrine in such an effective way, and my work to support the War Powers Resolution, I hope, was to reinforce the instincts that the president had that really, I think, culminated in those remarks.
We need to carry this over to the next segment. There's a lot of sentiment out there that is concerned with something you've already addressed, and I want to channel some of the audience out there in social media world who have been questioning.
We're taking umbrage with Congressman
Oh no,
Gaetz.
the blue checkmark brigade is unhappy.
It's not the blue checkmark brigade. There's a lot of people who follow us and who are the base and who are war room followers who are saying, yeah, I think the timing was a mistake, just like you addressed already. The timing was a mistake. Now, Matt, I don't want you to think that I'm against what you're saying. I agree with you, but let's get into some of this. Why, when you know the Democrats are seeking headlines that say Republicans split with Trump, this is all they're after, the Huffington Post, the CNN, all these guys, why take this sort of non-binding resolution to make this point that is already established within the Constitution?
Particularly when you're considered one of his most loyal guys.
Well, the answer to that is that I think the president needs to see his allies animating his true beliefs and instincts. I think that it is actually harmful to the president if all of the Republicans look like the pro-war party.
But
I think
didn't he try
I think
and whip the vote
reason
on Twitter in the morning yesterday?
Well, I spoke to the president, and he understands my principled view as he understands Rand Paul's and Mike Lee's and others who hold the view that we hold. But it is not a good thing for us politically if it looks like all the Republicans are beating the drums for war, because as we've talked about, I think the reason Nancy Pelosi put this resolution up was to try to cast Trump as pro-war, to try to divide our movement. And I'm trying to show that our movement is the broad movement that encompasses people with strong national security concerns and the more populist wing of our party. It's always a good time to do that.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to continue with Congressman Matt Gaetz in the controversial vote yesterday in the future of the Trump movement. We're also going to talk about impeachment. We return on episode 106 of War Room Impeachment.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam. War Room Impeachment.
On the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam, and now Gaetz, Congressman Matt Gaetz from the Panhandle of Florida, one of the president's not just most loyal, but I think most reflective, thoughtful, and powerful defenders in the United States Congress. War Room Impeachment, episode 106, John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem Broadcast Radio throughout the nation, America's voice throughout the world, and of course Newsmax TV, the fastest growing cable news operation. Mr. Raheem Kassam, let's go back. What else is Twitter positioning? Want to tell Congressman Gaetz?
Yeah, Congressman, I've been looking at some of the sentiment out there, and of course, the social media isn't the full arbiter or sole arbiter or even the majority arbiter of sentiment out there, but it's one way that our audience gets to feedback into us. There appears to be a distinction between our Twitter audience and a Facebook audience. The Facebook audience, we started with the Twitter stuff, right? Why now? Why did you? The Facebook audience really seems to want to know, how do you feel about voting with Nancy Pelosi? They don't feel comfortable. They might even agree with you, but it's just like, on principle, why are you standing with the Democrats yesterday?
I think it's always a mistake when Republicans and populists define our movement based on the beliefs of others. I think we made a big mistake during the Obama presidency that we were just reflexively against whatever Obama was for, and that allowed Obama to define our movement. I'm not going to let Nancy Pelosi or any other liberal define our movement. And if there's anybody that thinks I'm bosom buddies with Nancy Pelosi, heck, she launched an ethics investigation into me, tried to get me thrown out of Congress. I mean, I am Nancy Pelosi's worst nightmare, but that does not mean that I'm going to allow her to define what I believe by just reflexively opposing every vote she takes.
You're Nancy Pelosi's worst nightmare because not only you're a firebrand, you're also a strategist. We should all understand that the fever got broken on this impeachment and the numbers started coming back to the president because of this guy. When he thought through and went down to the Star Chamber and on world TV showed exactly what was happening, the whole thing changed. This is exactly why, and this is what I'm lost about. This austere conversation about the gravitas and the decorum of the Senate, I got it. But I do not understand why people like Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz are not being considered in the team to back up Pat Cipollone and to back up Jay Sekulow, who are fabulous lawyers. This is not just a legal brief. The trial of the century is going to be on global TV. It is much information warfare as a legal strategy.
I could tell you why. Republican senators are only going to be able to participate by passing notes to the Chief Justice. And Steve, you know as well as I do, those Republican senators do not want to see a bunch of House members over on the Senate floor doing our thing. I mean, that is just like inherent to the DNA of a senator, is to have maybe a different view of the lower house.
You think that's what's come down to?
I believe that you've had a number of Republicans in the Senate reach out to the president and advise him against having House members litigate this case on the floor. I think Pat is a great lawyer. I think that Jay not only is a great lawyer, but also is a very effective communicator. I think they'll do a great job. Obviously, Mark and Jim, Lee Zeldin, Andy Biggs and I, we're going to be helping in every way we can from a communication standpoint in the boiler room, going through evidence. But when it comes to the actual presentation of the case on the Senate floor, if it's your hope that House members are involved in that, I think you'll be disappointed.
Okay, to jump in here, Jason, here's the point, is that it is obviously very important to have you guys up on TV and on radio and communication, because you guys really understand mass communication like the president does. Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, yourself, and Zeldin particularly. That's not the point. Where the center of gravity of global television is going to be is on the thing itself. And if we don't have people first off, understand the case, understand it thoroughly. And only, I think, a handful of people do this. And I put Zeldin, Meadows, Jordan, and yourself at the top of that list that also can bring the communication skills. I'm not denigrating Radcliffe and some others, but can bring the communication ideas.
Right, and you have to be able to respond in the same medium. This is when we go back to even, say, Access Hollywood Weekend, for example. When we had the tape come out and there was talk on the team, do we just do a statement? Do we put, no, we have to have a video. We have to have something that will go and be out there. That's why we had President Trump actually go and deliver those remarks direct to camera. The action, the battlefield, so to speak here, is going to be down in the well of the Senate, where you're going to have Shifty Adam Schiff and the rest of the House Democrats attacking and knifing and sticking a shiv in President Trump for up to 6 hours a day. And our response has to be delivered in that same construct. It's not passing some note in some genteel manner. We're going to completely lose that. And if you don't think that President Trump is going to watch that and not want someone fighting back, guys, we're in for an explosion.
That's what I'm saying. Here's the point. Let's go back to the time of the Judiciary Committee, when all the arguments were that it should be some, constitutional law professor thing. And if it was not for you and Jim Jordan and a couple others that threw down and blew that thing up, that's what eviscerated their entire case. In fact, when Schiff comes and makes the argument, there won't be allowed the 7,000 pages of testimony. Trust me, those professors will have very little curated in there because of the simple fact that you guys said, hey, this is not a constitutional law class. We're going to throw down.
If I was litigating this case, I would go right after Adam Schiff. I would go after the fact that this is a setup built around his ego, his illegal coordination with the whistleblower, the lies that he told the American people. I would make this a trial of Adam Schiff, not the president. And I would advise those litigating the case that if they get into tweezing through the individual facts, that is a rabbit hole, that we have to expose this for the attempt to destabilize our democracy.
This is the whole point. You're going to put them on trial. How would you do that? You're going to turn the guns around on them and put them on trial.
I think it's by doing just what I said, by pointing out that this was not the organic outgrowth of some presidential misconduct. The president did nothing wrong. This is a setup. This is a distraction from the fact that they were humiliated in the Russia hoax, and I would go right at that in an opening statement.
Jason, anything? We got about a minute and a half here with Congressman Gaetz. Anything else you want to get to him?
Do you think the Democrats, after they're shot down with this impeachment, are going to push for more impeachment?
They've said that in court, Jason. As you well know, they've gone to court and said that they've got impeachment fever and there is no cure for it.
But that's why you have to cauterize it now. You have to. This has to be stopped in this trial. If you don't give them a full facial, right? If you don't punch hard, you're not going to stop it. It's a continual process.
Well, and as we see these rallies, as we see our movement continue to be animated, continue to grow, is it still your belief that this election is going to be a referendum on the legitimacy of this impeachment and this president? Or do you believe that many of the issues that were at play with Hillary Clinton will dominate?
The nullification project, that's what the Democrats have been about even before President Trump was sworn in.
Raheem, we got to go to a short commercial break before we wrap up. Tell me how we get more information out here about people going to the site. Things on fire right now. How do we exacerbate this?
Yeah, I'm really exacerbate. I'm really pleased that there's a lot of recent comments to the and reviews to the podcast. So that's my sole area of focus at the moment. It is warroom.org/podcast. You can find out how to download it on your podcast platform. We appreciate the ratings, the reviews, and the shares.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We'll return. We still got Matt Gaetz for a segment at the end. Raheem Kassam, Jason Miller. We're also going to have our English colleague talk about Margaret Thatcher Day and also any updates on Captain Hewitt's son and his new bride and their new home in Canada when we return on War Room Impeachment.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam. War Room Impeachment.
On the John Fredericks Radio Network.
Episode 106, we're live here on Capitol Hill, War Room Impeachment with Congressman Matt Gaetz. We've done the two eyes, we've done the Iran part. Let's do the impeachment part. Is Nancy Pelosi, Jason, we'll start with you. Is she playing this right? Her slow walk here, she's getting a little grief in the media, but she's beaten back the senators. She brought them to account and certain committee leaders over there. Is this smart what she's doing? Is she winning, or is it now they've taken the urgency off this?
Her echo chamber tells her that she's winning, and that's why she's holding out, thinking that she's going to continue to break down Republican senators. David Drucker from the Washington Examiner has a story up right now. Senate Republicans soften on impeachment witnesses.
Oops.
Yeah, but again, from the Trump perspective, whistleblower, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Shifty Adam Schiff, I would be fine with if we had to have a couple of witnesses on our end. If we had a Mick Mulvaney.
If we don't have the fire breathers over there, they want Mulvaney, they want Vogt, they want Rudy, and they want Bolton. That's their top four, right? They had the senators on Ari Melber yesterday. Said that's who they want, the old guys from Clinton thing. The president's in the Roosevelt room. He says, "Hey, I want the whistleblower. I want Schiff. I want Hunter Biden. I want Joe Biden." Would you take that trade?
I would support a motion to dismiss because I don't believe that they made their case, and I do think it sets a dangerous precedent for the country when you can screw up your impeachment in the House and then go and have this like curing trial in the Senate. I think that's bad for the country.
So you're number one. You're a motion to dismiss.
I'm a
you
motion
don't
to
think
dismiss
that keeps
guy.
him going on and on and on? That this because we had the votes, he was guilty, and the nation would have seen he was guilty.
I think that the Democrats don't look good when they stand up and say that this is the most emergent threat to our country. It's a clear and present danger. And then they sit on it like an egg waiting for it to hatch for weeks, over the break. So, look, I think that it's bad for the country, bad for the impeachment process to allow them to do in the Senate what they could not effectively do in the House.
You mean, in other words, to have even to have a trial, and you're saying to have any witnesses at all?
I would vote for a motion to dismiss in the Senate. Now, if we're going to have witnesses, I don't think we can go in low energy. I think we have to do exactly what you said.
But how about if you don't get a motion to dismiss, you just do the shifty shift going through the what they want is the 7,000 pages of the witnesses in the Star Chamber curated with shifty shift, taking 4 days to string together how evil Donald Trump is.
Yeah, first of all, if the American people have to watch Adam Schiff for 4 days, the president might win all 50 states. But he's not a compelling presenter of the evidence. But I think that there would be a way to limit that if McConnell really muscles up, and I think he has the capability to do that. He's shown that he intends to do that. But here's what Pelosi is balancing. She is balancing the fact that she smoked out Bolton, she smoked out Collins and Murkowski against the fact that now she's losing folks like Feinstein and even Adam Smith, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. So she'll continue to manage those crosswinds, and we have to continue to make this case that they're hypocrites.
The reason the president always looks to what you have to say is President admires smarts and courage. It was Churchill who said courage is the most important quality of all because upon that, all other virtues rest. Matt Gaetz is a profile in courage, and that's what you saw yesterday. And I would dare anybody to say what Matt Gaetz said in the well of the House yesterday versus some of the colleagues and guys we admire and guys we love, or what they recommended the other day. It's Gaetz that laid down the moral precepts and also the most practical politics. He did it on Tucker Carlson last night. Okay, this is Stephen K. Bannon with Congressman Matt Gaetz, Raheem Kassam, Jason Miller, episode 106, War Room Impeachment. Go to our site.
Happy Margaret Thatcher Day. You're going to have to look it up.
Margaret Thatcher Day. Thank you very much. Be back tomorrow morning at 9.